Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire, everybody. Now today I've brought you to the very, very northern tip of the county. You can go no further north than this. This used to be the most northern tip of the old county of Humberside, and interestingly it shares its name with the village that used to be at the southern tip of Humberside as well, and their names were Wold Newton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Wold Newton, new farm in a high forest. In the East Riding this week we find ourselves at the northernmost tip of the county. Welcome to Wold Newton, which shares its name with the village we met back in North East Lincolnshire some time ago. As well as sharing the same name, the two parishes share a geographical fact. They mark the northernmost and southernmost extents of the old county of Humberside. This, the East Riding version, still marks the point at which the East Riding reaches its northernmost extreme, although technically that's only half true. I'll explain why in a bit. This village is one of the many that are scattered along the Great Wold Valley, and through it flows a winterbourne stream called the Gypsey Race, which eventually ends up in the North Sea at Bridlington. The valley was a site of considerable neolithic activity, and there are many barrows and burial mounds in the area. Wold Newton was no exception to that rule. There's at least 3 in the parish, 2 of which indirectly form the name of one of the streets in the village. There are 9 listed buildings, one of which is Wal Newton Horde, where the children's author Christina Butler once lived. There's also a church, a cricket club, a pub, a community centre and a secondary settlement to discuss here too. So, there's plenty to see in Wold Newton. We'd better get going, hadn't we? We start at the northern end of the village on Front Street, which has for centuries been the central focus of life in Wold Newton. Many of the main features are or were on this road, but there's more to the place than that. As well as Front Street, there's also Back Street, and connecting the two is Back Lane. Front Street and Back Street both run north to south, flanking either side of the church. At their ends, they meet Butt Lane and Laking Lane, which are essentially the same road, which runs east to west. This essentially makes Wold Newton a giant oblong, with history at every turn. Back Street used to be called Shoemaker's Lane, suggesting at one time there would have been a cobbler's shop along here. For sure, there was once a school. Built in 1764, it taught basic lessons and eventually moved to a new premises built by Abraham Rhodes on Front Street in 1832. You can access the church from here too. Dedicated to All Saints, this one is of Norman origin, but it's built on a former Saxon site. The chancel was rebuilt in 1850 by Marmaduke Langley, but the newest part of the building is the north aisle, added by the architect Temple Moore in 1857. Okay, so this one is open and there's plenty to have a look at on the walls in this place. Already I can see to my right here. There's some stuff up there which we'll catch in a moment. There's also some stuff on the left. There's some tablets up there above the door. There's all sorts of things in here. So yeah, this will be good. As we'll discover shortly, Wold Newton had some key roles in World War II. Here on the wall is a memorial for the 2 men lost to that conflict. Underneath that is a vault, and this tablet tells us it contains the remains of Henry Cook, a Scarborough banker who was elected as a magistrate for the town 3 times. His wife and daughter are also in the same vault. There are some other tablets on the other side of the door. A couple are a little hard to read, but one that did stand out was a brass to William Cadman. He was a Royal Navy commander, killed in an explosion aboard HMS Vanguard in 1917. It looks like the book exchange is really good here. Lining the north wall is a huge bookcase, but even it's not big enough for the massive collection it's housing. Above it is a list of all the church's former rectors. Note that this mentions Newton Rochford, that's Wold Newton's alternative name. At the back on the west wall there's 2 massive tablets with the 10 Commandments on them. Now, I'm no religious expert, but I'm pretty sure that none of them say, "Thou shalt not eat quality street chocolates." It's a good job really, because there were some on offer here, and I don't mind if I do. Exiting the churchyard, we return to Back Street, and our next landmark is one that certainly would be difficult to miss: Wal Newton Hall. For many years, this was the home of the children's author Christina Butler, who lived in its western section. Between 1988 and 2005, Butler wrote 13 books, including titles such as Stanley in the Dark and Archie the Ugly Dinosaur. I would imagine that the younger viewers may remember some of those from their school days. Speaking of which, directly opposite the hall is the Wold Newton Foundation School, the only educational building here today. Now we're at the end of Back Street, and to our left is Laking Lane, which is sometimes known as Bridlington Road. Up there somewhere is Wold Newton Cricket Club. This is one of only 2 villages in the Great Wold Valley to still have a cricket team. The other one is nearby Rudston. On the junction is the Anvil Arms. This dates from the 18th or 19th century. Part of it used to be the village's forge, hence the name. Before 1967 it was called the Blacksmith's Arms instead, but it's always retained its historic connection to the days of local ironmongery. It's the only pub in the parish. The road alongside the pub is Rainsborough Lane. Follow that to the south and you'll end up at Wold Cottage, where the meteorite we spoke about last week landed in 1795. At its northern end there's a phone box with a defib machine, and alongside the road is a stream which runs to a mere. This is fed by the Gypsey Race, a chalk stream that flows through the Great Wold Valley. It's a winterbourne stream, meaning it dries up during the summer, but this remains full all year round. In the 19th century it provided the village's water. In 1844, pumps connected to it were located in every street. Over the road we have a bus shelter. This village is served by the number 524, which calls here on Wednesdays and Fridays, linking it to Bridlington. There's a rather big parish notice board in here, so let's get Wold Newton ticked off the East Riding list. We have only 13 left to go to now. That's mad. Next to the shelter is a really detailed map of the place with loads of information, including some wartime history. During World War II, this area was often used for tank practice, and there was even a bunker north of the village for the East Riding Secret Army, men seconded from the Home Guard. Now, I'm pretty sure you'll have gathered from that map that Wold Newton is a big loop with lanes that go off in all directions, and effectively what we're doing is walking around that central loop, but I am going to extend that loop a little bit. I'm on Front Street here, but we're not walking up here straight back to the car. Oh no. What we're going to do, once this car comes past me, let's get to the side so it doesn't run me over. You can see on the corner there, in front of me there, that house is the old post office. We're going to walk past that and past the pond, which we've just had a look at, and then take a right turn. And what that will do is it will bring us back onto Front Street further up via a public footpath, just to make the walk a little bit longer and a little bit more interesting. Indeed, this was the old post office, occupying a prominent position at the end of Front Street. Let's follow Butt Lane now to the west, and although this looks pretty nondescript, it has a few secrets. First of all, the name Butt Lane is important. It's a reference to medieval archery butts, big mounds of earth against which archers would place their targets in order to catch stray arrows. Butt Lane was also the location of the Britannia Works, which made farm machinery, and it was run by a Mr. J.S. Summers. Oh, and Butt Lane is also a good place to get a nice view of the countryside. After rounding a bend, I passed a roadside stall selling all kinds of plants. With no shop in the village these days, it's pretty much the only kind of retail here. The road bends back again towards the west, and on the next corner is a big farm. Farming has always been an important activity here, but it never made much money. From 1854 until the 1890s, Wold Newton had a clothing society set up to help the poorest agricultural workers and their families. Let's head around the edge of the farm now along a path back to Front Street. On the way, I met some chickens, who seemed friendly enough. We've emerged at Church Row, a collection of terraced houses that face All Saints Church on Front Street. A left turn brings us to an old school, but this is one we've yet to mention. When Wold Newton's population became too large for Abraham Rhodes's school, this one was built to replace it in 1871. It was funded by money left by Rhodes himself in his will and a parliamentary grant. This means Wold Newton has had at least 4 known schools, a lot for a small place. It's only ever had one Methodist chapel though, a Wesleyan building purchased by the villagers in the early 1980s. And according to the sign outside the old chapel, it's now the Wold Newton Community Centre. And we are finished with the village now. We've walked all the way around it. All we've got to do is head up the hill to my car, which is up there. Back lane and back street are on the right hand side, and my car is just beyond the end of that road there. Now, there is one other thing to do here in the parish of Wold Newton. I'm just going to move the camera across here because there's a car coming down the road. For the second time today, I've been stood in the middle of the road and a car's come down. It happens, it happens. There we go, he can get past now without having to dodge me, I suppose. As I was saying, so there's another thing to do here in the parish of Wold Newton. At the beginning of this video, I said that Wold Newton used to be at the northernmost tip of the old county of Humberside, and it is, but it's not the village that's at the northernmost tip, it's the parish that's at the northernmost tip, and that means there's another settlement still to see. The most northerly village in the East Riding of Yorkshire these days is a place called Fordon. So let's head on up this road and go and find it. The village is also famous for the Wal Newton Horde, a Roman coin collection dating from the early 4th century AD. It contains 1,857 coins held within a pottery container and was acquired by the Yorkshire Museum in 2016. The hoard was found by metal detectorist David Blakely in 2014 in a field near the village. All of the coins are Numi except for one, which is a radiate. The Numi all date from the period 294 to 307 AD and the radiate from between 268 and 270 AD. The coins were found within a grey ware jar alongside a fragmentary dish and other fragments of pottery, one of which may have been the jar's lid. The Wal Newton Horde is the largest of its type ever discovered in the north of England. After being declared treasure, the hoard was valued at just over £44,000. It went on public display on the 1st of June 2017 in the Yorkshire Museum as part of the York Roman Festival. Yes, technically speaking, it's Fordon and not Wold Newton that has the honour of being the most northerly village in the East Riding. Wold Newton is the most northerly parish, but Fordon is a separate settlement. It used to be a parish of its own until 1935, when it was abolished and merged with Wold Newton, giving us the boundaries we have today. The name Fordon was recorded in the Domesday Book. It's thought to come from the Old English words for, meaning in front of, and dun, meaning hill. You put them together and you get in front of the hill, and that's not inaccurate. There are definitely some big hills around here. Fordon's main landmark is this tiny church on the Wold Newton Road. This is said to be the smallest active church in Yorkshire and one of the smallest in Britain. Dedicated to St James, this is a Grade 2 listed building. Dating from Norman times, this has been closed for worship and then reopened at least twice. The oldest parts of the church are Norman, with a mishmash of later additions. Its font is a simple Norman chalice set up on a later base with carved foliage decoration. Being so close to Bridlington, some say that smugglers used to use this building as a rather unique hideaway. And that's going to do us for Fordon and the parish of Wold Newton. Now, if you drive towards Bridlington from here, there's a scenic route you can take through the Great Wold Valley. We're going to follow that route over the next few episodes, so come back in 7 days' time to see where this lovely landscape leads us to next. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.